At an undisclosed location, two individuals are being held captive. One of them is dressed in military attire, while the other is wearing a simple tracksuit. The military-clad individual begins to speak, expressing his apology to a professor. However, the professor dismisses this apology, placing the blame squarely on himself. The soldier then reflects on the events that led to their predicament, expressing anger toward the informant who betrayed them. He explains that the enemy force was much larger than they had anticipated and that the enemy had detailed knowledge of their route and attack timings. It becomes evident that this situation was a trap from the very beginning. Suddenly, there are clanks heard from beyond the door, which shortly opens to reveal one of the guards throwing another soldier into their holding cell. This new arrival is identified as Sergeant Kim. The soldier in military attire is visibly upset by how another soldier is being treated and stands up to hurl insults at their captor. The guard responds with incomprehensible language and promptly strikes the soldier's head with an assault rifle. A glimpse of the captor reveals that he is of African descent, hinting that this ordeal may be occurring in one of the war-torn countries on the continent. Sergeant Kim asks the soldier in military attire if he's all right, addressing him as lieutenant. The lieutenant assures him that he's fine and inquires about the whereabouts of the other troops. Kim informs him that the others were taken somewhere else. More clanks are heard outside the door, and it opens again, revealing a guard who collapses to the ground, knocked out by an individual who was behind him. This newcomer asks if Lieutenant Kong Ham Chan is present, surprising the lieutenant with his knowledge of Korean. The lieutenant inquires about the stranger's identity, and the stranger reveals that he is here to rescue them. They all begin following the stranger, witnessing the aftermath of his arrival with multiple guards incapacitated. Kong expresses his surprise and asks the stranger about his division and the number of people with him. The stranger refuses to disclose this information, stating that he is alone. Kong is amazed at how a single person could accomplish this stealthily. As they prepare to move, a guard emerges from a suddenly open door, reaching for his gun. Kong is ready to open fire, but the stranger swiftly incapacitates the first guard with 2 quick blows and takes out the other with a thrown knife. The stranger assures the soldiers that he will handle the enemies, prompting Kang's annoyance at being treated like baggage. The stranger moves swiftly, defeating any guards who attempt to stop him. Kong realizes that there will be multiple enemies around the next corner and believes the stranger will need assistance. However, the stranger continues to advance, silently dispatching all opposition. Kong is shocked by his disregard for life and considers him a true monster, noting that he is not from the military. They eventually reach the outside, and the stranger instructs them to wait for 1 minute. Kong is puzzled by this but notices the other soldiers behind them, clearly out of breath. Kong observes the stranger's black pupils and concludes that he is skilled but not part of any military. Kong asks if the stranger is Korean, but the stranger remains silent, only speaking up when the time is up, and they resume moving. After a while, they arrive at a clearing where other captured soldiers are waiting. Both groups are thrilled to be reunited, and Kong inquires about what happened. The rescued soldiers explain that the stranger saved them as well and instructed them to wait. The stranger announces that this is where they part ways and advises them to head southwest, where people will be waiting for them. Kong expresses his gratitude, and the stranger, confirming Kang's suspicion of being a mercenary, offers a handshake, noting that even though it was a request, he still appreciates him with thanks. The stranger looks at Kang's hand, and at that moment, an explosion erupts from the nearby bushes, startling them both. The stranger shouts for everyone to take cover, and the explosion goes off just as he finishes his sentence. The blast leaves Kong disoriented, but miraculously, he survives. He identifies it as mortar rounds and quickly checks on his comrades, confirming their safety as the explosion narrowly missed them. Gunshots ring out, and we witness the stranger swiftly retaliating against the attackers. Kong is profoundly shocked, especially because the stranger appears to be no older than a teenager, revealing his youthful appearance. The scene shifts to 6 months later, where we find ourselves outside a school. Inside a classroom, a teacher introduces a new student to the class, who happens to be the same stranger who aided the soldiers in their escape. As he introduces himself, we finally learn his name, Ijin. Inside the school, a girl reflects on her brother. Her thoughts are abruptly interrupted by another girl who bursts into the classroom, exclaiming about the arrival of a strikingly handsome new student. The girl realizes that they are talking about her brother, a brother she never expected to see again due to a plane crash while he was inside an airport. She gazes longingly at Ijin, who is revealed to be her brother. Next to him, an elderly man touches his face gently, shedding tears of joy at his unexpected return. The girl questions if this person is truly her brother. Ijin notices her and offers a gentle smile, confirming her identity as Daeyeon. Her contemplation is disrupted by a girl who is clearly annoyed at Daeyeon for ignoring her for so long. This girl demands Daeyeon's gym clothes for their physical education class and inquires if Daeyeon brought them. Daeyeon confirms that she did but asks what she would wear if she gives them away. The girl scoffs at Daeyeon and labels her as insane for talking back, slapping her across the head. It becomes evident that Daeyeon has been a victim of ongoing bullying. We return to the classroom where Ijin is attending. The teacher continues introducing him to the class, explaining that he had been living abroad for personal reasons and requesting the class's help in his adjustment. The girls in the class are noticeably infatuated with him. The teacher instructs Ijin to take an empty seat, and he complies. As he walks to his seat, a red-haired guy in an orange tracksuit glares at him, wondering why everyone is so enamored with him and considering him weak. The guy attempts to humiliate Ijin by trying to trip him, but Ijin immediately notices and prevents the attempt. This surprises the guy, who thought he had timed it perfectly. Ijin gives him a stern look, which further annoys him. Ijin recalls his conversation with Lieutenant Kong, who advised him to avoid fighting while in Korea. Ijin agrees not to engage in combat without sufficient information about the place, emphasizing that he won't rush into danger recklessly. He describes himself as a professional with a decade of battlefield experience, quite significant given his age. Kong reminds him that he's sharing this advice not just for Ijin's sake, but also for the well-being of his potential opponents. The teacher notices Ijin's momentary pause and asks why he stopped. Ijin apologizes and continues to his seat. The guy next to Ijin is instructed by the teacher to look out for him, and we learn that his name is Park Youngchan. Youngchan advises Ijin to be cautious around a student named Lee Jaehyung, who attempted to trip him, and his friend Ju Hyukjin, who is currently chatting with Lee. Ijin thanks Youngchan for the information. Then, the math teacher enters the classroom and starts the lesson. Ijin observes the people around him. Some are sleeping, some are laughing at something on their phones, and some are outside in gym clothes. He reflects on his days as a mercenary, briefly reminiscing about the intense training he endured. Today, he went through nothing, realizing that this country is peaceful while gazing into the sky. When school ends, we see Daeyeon walking towards the school gates. She spots Ijin, who is waiting for her, and this surprises her. Ijin asks if she'd like to walk home together, and she agrees. As they walk, a silence falls between them. Ijin mentions that this situation might feel a bit awkward, but Daeyeon responds that it's not really that awkward, just a little. Ijin adds that there's no need to be too flustered, explaining that he feels the same way. He was only 9 years old during the incident, meaning he has few memories of her or their grandfather. He points out that it might be even more challenging for her since she was only 7 at the time. This reveals that Ijin is now 19, and Daeyeon is 17. They continue walking in silence for a while, but one of the girls who used to bully Daeyeon spots her. Daeyeon becomes nervous, uncertain about what to do. The girl taunts Daeyeon, asking who the boy next to her is, mocking her by suggesting that he might be her boyfriend. Daeyeon quickly corrects the assumption, explaining that he's her brother. This surprises the girl. Ijin asks if the girl is a friend, and Daeyeon sheepishly confirms it. The girl becomes annoyed by this and questions Daeyeon if she is her friend. Daeyeon visibly trembles, and the girl persists, Ijin staring at their group. One of the boys in the group becomes angry at Ijin's intense gaze and stands up from his seat. Another asks if he's out of his mind. Ijin starts to think that they might be looking for a fight. He stands face to face with Ijin and suggests that he's only trying to act cool in front of his sister. Ijin takes note of all the boys' mistakes, thinking about how he's closing in the distance so easily, despite his exposed weak points and the lack of a weapon. He is puzzled by the boy's confidence but recalls the advice of Kong, who decides to leave the guy alone. The boy, frustrated by Ijin's indifference, grabs him by the shirt and prepares to slap him. That's when Daeyeon bows her head in apologies, explaining that Ijin lived abroad for a long time and wasn't accustomed to the local culture. The boy rebukes this, questioning what that has to do with him. Ijin looks at his horrified sister and suddenly jabs the boy's hand, dropping his backpack to the ground. He goes to Daeyeon and tells her to stand still for a moment, gently placing his blazer on her head. The boy attempts to attack Ijin from behind, but he swiftly knocks him out with one punch. The other two are surprised by Ijin's performance. Ijin feels annoyed that he had to break the promise he made to Lieutenant Kong on his very first day. The scene then cuts to a military zone, where some people are training. We see Kong observing them. A soldier approaches Kong, mentioning that today is the day Ijin goes to school. It appears that they have been educating him for the past 6 months and hope that he adjusts well. Kong confidently states that Ijin will be fine because he personally trained him. Returning to the fight scene, after Ijin knocks out the first boy, he quickly dashes to the other person and punches him squarely in the gut, sending him flying over a small balcony and rendering him unconscious as well. The girl is shocked by the outcome of the fight, and Ijin looks at her with a stern expression. Daeun takes the blazer off her head and wonders what happened to the guys who were picking a fight, seeing them knocked out cold. Ijin walks past the girl, heading toward Daeun, and asks if she is surprised, offering to buy her some food. Daeun reassures him that it's okay. Then Ijin suggested that they should go home. The girl takes a moment to scrutinize him, questioning whether he's truly the same person who effortlessly incapacitated 2 individuals earlier. She's puzzled because he's now treating Daeun with utmost kindness. They depart, leaving the girl bewildered. On their way, Daeun inquires if he indeed took down the guys who were threatening them. He confirms it, mentioning the rudeness of staring at people, as it might provoke anger. Ijin acknowledges this but explains that he intervened because he believed they were causing trouble for Daeun. Daeun flares up at this thought, her face turning red. Meanwhile, his grandpa pleads with him not to do the dishes and instead sit down to eat some fruit. Ijin declines, insisting on doing the dishes while seated. As he washes the dishes, his grandpa expresses hope that the food met his liking, emphasizing that he prepared it to the best of his abilities. Ijin appreciates his cooking, assuring him that the food is always delicious. His grandpa visibly appreciates the compliment and asks about his first day of school, inquiring if there were any issues. Ijin looks back at Daeun and reports that everything went smoothly. They exchange goodnight wishes and head to bed. While sitting on his bed, Ijin reflects on the events leading up to this point, particularly his grandpa's warm welcome and the abundant food he provided. As he drifts off to sleep, he dreams about the day of the plane crash, witnessing glimpses of his parents protecting him during the terrifying descent. He abruptly wakes up, relieved that it was just a dream. Upon leaving his room, he finds Daeun preparing breakfast. Ijin notices his grandfather's absence, with Daeun mentioning that he's gone to work. Ijin is slightly surprised by this, and Daeun hurries to the door, explaining that she needs to leave early. Ijin observes the leftover food on the table, remnants from the previous night. The scene shifts to the girl who had witnessed the earlier fight. She explains to another girl, Ijin, who is bullying Daeun, that the person who incapacitated her friends was Daeun's brother. After Ijin and Daeun depart, Ijin encounters the group of bullies and demands to know what happened to them. She wonders if they'll be okay if they continue bullying Daeun, recalling Ijin's intervention and the intimidating glare he gave her. She reassures herself, believing that Ijin's brother is a powerful figure among the third-year students. The scene transitions to Daeun suddenly being slapped across the head, with Ijin demanding that Daeun follow her. Daeun complies, and the scene shifts to outside the school where Daeun is being assaulted by Ijin. Ijin warns her about her brother's difficult life and implies that her brother is heading to confront Ijin right now, perhaps having already met him. Daeun screams in protest but is slapped again. Annoyed by her screaming, Ijin gets up, and Daeun runs to Ijin's classroom. Inside, Ijin's brother and his accomplices are already present. Daeun makes it in time to scream for her brother, and Ijin sees her face marked with redness from the slap and her clothes muddied. His eyes turn menacing, and Ijin's brother mocks Daeun, asking if she's worried about him. Ijin, emerging from the doorway, suggests that even she would be concerned if her brother were about to be beaten up, judging by Ijin's demeanor, indicating that things won't end well for them. In the moments leading up to this incident, Lee and Ju Hyukshin are seen bullying Youngchan, tossing erasers at him, attempting to hit his head. Ju intimidates a classmate to hand over his eraser, which is quite large, and he hurls it at Youngchan, making him uncomfortable. Lee picks up an even larger, harder eraser and hurls it with great force. However, Ijin steps in front of the victim, using his backpack as a shield to block the projectile. They become annoyed by his interference, and after Ijin takes his seat, they plan to confront him after school to put an end to his interference. Ijin notices the bullies laughing and looking at him. Youngshan inquires if Ijin has any plans after school and offers to show him around. Ijin declines, explaining that he needs to go home with his sister. Youngshan expresses interest, asking if they transferred together. Ijin reveals that Daeun is already attending school when Youngshan inquires about her name. However, upon hearing the name, Daeun, Youngshan's expression immediately shifts to one of concern and sadness. He tells Ijin that his sister's school life has been arduous due to her popularity with boys since middle school. The trouble began when a girl developed a crush on one of the boys, leading to relentless bullying directed at Daeun. Ijin is taken aback by the revelation, finding it difficult to comprehend why people would subject Daeun to such mistreatment for such a frivolous reason. Youngshan explains that the situation worsened because the girl who bullied Daeun happened to be in the same class as her when they entered school. It became so severe that people were astonished that Daeun continued to attend. Ijin attempts to wrap his head around the situation, unable to fathom the senselessness of the bullying. Youngshan remarks that, when you uncover the truth, there's nothing extraordinary about it. People like them don't need a significant reason to engage in such behavior. Ijin recalls his conversation with his grandfather, who had asked Daeun about her school life, and he remembers the sadness in her eyes as she falsely claimed everything was fine. Grateful for the information. Back to the present, Ijin is interrupted as a large individual, the same one he had confronted at the store, forcefully slams open the classroom door, accompanied by a group of others. Ju inquires about their presence, but it's Kim Kisu who responds, stating that he has something he wants. The group is surprised by Kim's unexpected appearance. Kim's companions point toward Ijin, ridiculing them for losing to someone they consider frail. Kim beckons Ijin to stand up, and Ijin complies. Ijin questions if he is Kim, which astonishes Kim that his name is already known. An intense glare from Ijin annoys Kim, leading him to order one of his companions to bring Ijin over. As the companion approaches Ijin, Daeun rushes into the room, visibly battered and dirtied. Ijin's expression turns cold as he observes her condition. Kim expresses jealousy over Ijin's caring sister, and Heejin, Kim's sister, responds, saying she would also be worried if her brother were about to be attacked. Overwhelmed by the number of individuals targeting Ijin, Daeun breaks into tears, apologizing to him. Ijin reassures her, stating that none of this is her fault. When another companion attempts to punch Ijin, he redirects the attack, striking the assailant's exposed windpipe, causing him to kneel in distress. One of the remaining goons panics and attempts to strike Ijin, but his vulnerability becomes his downfall as Ijin lands a kidney shot, toppling him. The shocking turn of events leaves everyone in disbelief, even Kim. Ijin glares at the brother and sister, who are visibly shaken. Kim acknowledges that Ijin possesses some impressive skills, but Ijin pays him no attention. Kim tries to deliver a kick to Ijin's neck, initially thinking he succeeded. However, his confidence shatters as he realizes Ijin flawlessly blocked the attack. Panic sets in, and Kim launches another assault from a different angle, but Ijin effortlessly parries it. Ijin seizes Kim's leg and delivers a powerful punch to his face, sending him crashing to the ground. Ijin fixes him with a menacing stare and, with one final strike, renders Kim unconscious. The astonishing defeat of Kim, including Lee and Ju, leaves everyone stunned. He approaches Heejin with clenched fists, and she braces herself for an impending strike. However, it's Daeun who intervenes, urging him to cease his actions, stating that it's enough. Ijin questions this decision, pointing out that these are the same individuals who tormented her. Daeun insists that it's all right now, and he should stop. Ijin acquiesces and offers to escort her back to class. Inside the classroom, Kim's sister seethes at the sight of her brother and his friends battered and bruised. While walking, Daeun remarks on Ijin's fighting skills and apologizes once more, feeling responsible for him getting into fights 2 days in a row. Ijin reassures her, expressing his willingness to fight on her behalf. He explains that where he used to live, people typically only looked out for themselves, except when it came to family. This prompts a flashback of Ijin as a mercenary, pondering the concept of family while witnessing a man defending his daughter from attacks. Daeun questions how this could be, considering that he barely remembers her and their grandpa. Ijin acknowledges her point but asserts that he knows they are family deep down. Daeun becomes embarrassed by his words and informs Ijin that she'll finish the rest of the journey alone. Ijin inquires why, but they are already in front of her classroom. She bids him farewell, and Ijin smiles at her shyness. Upon returning to his own classroom, Lee and Ju offer their congratulations on his victory, with Ju playfully suggesting that it seemed like he was effortlessly dominating. Ijin takes his seat, and Youngshan shyly admits that he thinks Ijin looks cool too. In another location, Kim and his cronies lament their defeat, with Kim acknowledging that Ijin is in a completely different league. His sister continues to berate him, wondering how they could lose to a single individual. Kim, fed up with her nagging, commands her to be silent, but she refuses to back down. Finally, with one final menacing glare from Kim, she becomes so infuriated that a tear forms in her eye, and she storms off, slamming the door behind her. Back in her classroom, she sarcastically remarks to Daeun that her life will be smooth sailing from now on, as she can rely on her brother for anything. Daeun ignores Heejin's taunts, further fueling her anger. Heejin ponders if she has no choice but to silently observe Daeun from now on, asserting that she won't stand for it. While walking toward the school gate, Daeun contemplates her brother, who had protected her, but she also reflects on the bullying she has endured until now, questioning if it's genuinely over. Lost in thought, she passes by Ijin without noticing him, prompting him to inquire if something is on her mind. She apologizes for not noticing him, but he brushes it off. Daeun suggests that they make a quick stop at the store to pick up some items, as their grandpa prefers to have dinner prepared when he returns home. Behind them, Heejin gives a sly smirk, clearly up to something. In the store, Daeun sees that Ijin attracts a lot of attention just because of his looks, with some girls whispering about him. She wonders if he's ever dated, and he says he hasn't. Daeun is taken aback, pointing out how popular he seems here, so he must have had the same attention back home. Ijin looks down briefly, then says he was just too busy before. He asks if she's ever dated, and she says she hasn't either. Back at the apartment, Ijin's grandpa hands him a new phone, the latest model. The grandpa mentions he opened it to add some contacts and hopes Ijin doesn't mind. He also offers to get Daeun a new phone when he has the cash, but she insists her current one is fine. As they talk, Ijin thanks his grandpa, making him super happy. Later, in his room, Ijin checks out his new phone and texts the lieutenant, who's puzzled since he had already given Ijin a pricey phone. The next morning, as he comes out of the bathroom, he sees Daeun in a hurry, mentioning she's running late but has left him breakfast. On her way, she says she'll get there in time. We learn she's behind schedule because she remade the soup that Grandpa loved from the night before. Lost in thoughts about her grandpa's praise, she's suddenly knocked down by a group of tough-looking girls. One tells her to watch it, and even though Daeun says sorry, she's slapped right away. One of the girls suggests hitting up karaoke, and they all agree. Another girl gets in Daeun's face, telling her she's coming too. From Daeun's perspective and her blonde hair, it's clear that's Heejin. They head into the karaoke place, but only 3 of them emerge later. The attendant remarks about how noisy they were inside, joking they must have had a blast. But when he checks their booth, he's horrified to find Daeun, badly beaten. She stands up, declines an offer to call 911, and stumbles out. At school, when the teacher takes attendance, Daeun's absent. Heejin smirks, aware of the reason. One of Heejin's friends wonders if they're in trouble, but Heejin dismissively says they're in the clear, confident Ijin won't know. Ijin waits for Daeun outside school and, seeing she's not showing up, tries calling her. No answer. At home, Daeun's in bed, likely sobbing. Ijin notices her shoes at the door and knocks, hearing her shaky voice claim she's just sick. But on his way out, he spots blood on her shoes, alarming him. The scene shifts to him tending to her injuries, likely after forcing his way into her room out of worry. She feeds him a lie about tripping downstairs after dodging a bike, causing her wounds. He asks if she needs a hospital, but she's afraid the truth will come out. Flashbacks show Daeun accusing Heejin of bullying her in the past, even involving the police. However, Heejin's angry mother dismisses the allegations, demanding to speak to Daeun's parents. This seems to be a breaking point for Daeun, who breaks down. Back in the present, Ijin observes that her injuries, while not life-threatening, will cause her discomfort for a while. Impressed by Ijin's first aid skills, Daeun worries about how their grandpa, who has a weak heart, might react. Ijin promises to handle it. As he's leaving, she thanks him, relieved she didn't reveal the whole truth. In her mind, students like them can't do anything. Outside her room, Ijin seems visibly furious. At a bar, Kim, still looking roughed up, discusses the situation with his buddies. One of them suggests they should have been better prepared. Kim implies they don't need a fair fight, with everyone nodding in agreement. Suddenly, Kim gets a call from his sister who fills him in on her actions. He's both surprised and pleased, hinting they had plans for Ijin too. But then, Ijin emerges from the shadows. Kim, taken aback, proposes settling their score right there. Before Kim can finish, Ijin takes down one of Kim's friends. Another tries to land a hit but gets knocked out by Ijin. A brawl ensues, with Ijin dominating every attacker. Just when it seems Ijin might be caught off guard with a sneak attack, he quickly counters and overpowers his attackers, leaving Kim in awe of his fighting skills. With a menacing look, Ijin warns Kim to leave his sister alone. Kim, frightened, tries to retaliate using a glass and then a broken bottle, but Ijin easily subdues him. Holding Kim by the throat, Ijin issues a stern warning, his eyes glowing with intensity. He then leaves, leaving the bargoers stunned. Outside, Ijin rushes over, worried about her brother since their call was cut short. She's alarmed seeing Ijin and stumbles, hurting her hand. Suddenly, Ijin's phone rings. It's his grandpa. Inside the bar, Ijin scolds Kim, who suggests they shouldn't target Ijin's sister anymore. He tries to caution Ijin, but she doesn't heed his words. Pushed to the limit, Kim yells out her full name, threatening her that if she ever targets Ijin's sister again, he'll turn on her. Outside, Ijin sits with his grandfather on a bench. They discuss Daeun's situation. Grandpa expresses his challenges in raising her, mentioning he's never cared for a girl before and feels he hasn't done enough for her. Ijin's grandfather reminisces about how Daeun supported him during the loss of Ijin's parents. He's saddened that Daeun doesn't open up to him. Ijin comforts him, saying they have a mutual love and bond. Ijin promises to look out for her at school, to which his grandfather expresses immense gratitude. In the hospital, Kim and Ijin's parents confront them. Their dad isn't surprised by Kim's condition, labeling him a troublemaker. Their mom, frustrated, asks why he isn't more concerned about their injured children. Before leaving, it's revealed that Ijin informed the parents about the incident and the person responsible. Kim, skeptical, questions if Ijin really injured Ijin's arm. Ijin, clearly lying, says it was indeed Ijin. Outside the hospital, the parents discuss the situation. The mother mentions contacting someone known as the chief, to which the father responds with annoyance, suggesting they let the school handle it. Ijin overhears this conversation. Elsewhere, the chief, a formidable man in a black suit, grumbles about getting involved in kids' issues. Back at his house, Ijin ponders the recent events and worries about potential consequences. Suddenly, two burly men arrive seeking Ijin. Claiming their acquaintances, Ijin leaves with them, leaving his grandpa bewildered. They take Ijin to a warehouse. There, the chief instructs them to quickly handle Ijin. One henchman wields a bat, indicating they should break Ijin's arm and implying this is retaliation for Kim's situation. However, Ijin remains stoic, surprising the chief. Ijin swiftly disables one attacker, then dodges a bat swing from the other, eventually taking him down too. Impressed and somewhat intimidated by Ijin's skills, the chief decides to engage him directly. Despite the chief's quick moves, Ijin defends and counters effectively. They engage in a fast-paced combat, with Ijin gaining the upper hand and eventually overpowering the chief. As the chief lies defeated, he realizes the kids picked a fight with someone far out of their league. Inside a building, Ijin's parents anxiously await news. The mother is surprised by the extended wait. Finally, the phone rings. The father answers, quickly apologizing for the pointless task his wife set in motion. However, the chief on the other end says he's the one who should be apologizing because he's been defeated. The father is taken aback, knowing the chief's significant standing in the underworld. As they converse, a door opens to reveal Ijin, catching the family off guard. Outside that room, it's evident that agents have neutralized the guards. The call with the chief ends abruptly, leading him to surmise Ijin had reached the location. Ijin, in a state of shock, stands abruptly. Her mother, in a fit of rage, verbally assaults Ijin. The father intervenes, silencing his wife, and turns his attention to Ijin. He inquires about how Ijin managed to infiltrate the place. Ijin sarcastically mentions the guards. He ponders the chief's words, curious about how he discovered their hideout. Losing her patience, the mother dials the police. Ijin, feeling triumphant, contemplates involving a prosecutor. She tauntingly asks Ijin if he realizes who he's dealing with. Ijin coolly replies that he's well aware. The father is a twice-elected congressman running for another term. Ijin smugly whispers to Ijin that he's doomed. In the midst of this, Ijin pulls out his phone and plays a video that shows Ijin bullying and robbing a classmate. The mother, recognizing the gravity of the situation, hangs up on the police. Ijin is baffled about how Ijin obtained the footage. It turns out he sourced it from surveillance cameras and stored it on a memory stick. Ijin attempts to appeal to her father, but he's fed up with her antics. Ijin mentions having similar evidence against Kim, revealing that the siblings frequently recorded their bullying escapades. The mother challenges Ijin, questioning the effectiveness of his threats. Ijin retorts, mentioning he also has footage from the warehouse incident. The father, acknowledging Ijin's commitment to protecting his sister, offers to cover medical expenses. Ijin declines, instead demanding that Ijin and Kim steer clear of his sister forever. The father, feeling cornered, agrees to move his children overseas, a decision that upsets Ijin and her mother. Ijin insists they leave by the next day. Ijin is devastated by this ultimatum. When the father requests the incriminating footage, Ijin's eyes turn a menacing red. He questions the father's audacity, causing the man to quickly apologize. Returning home, Ijin is warmly greeted by his concerned family. They discuss the day's events, with his grandfather expressing relief, having believed Ijin was in grave danger. Daeun adds that they gave off a bad vibe. He tells her not to worry and to take care of herself, then asks how she is doing now. She sheepishly responds that she is fine. Ijin assures her that she won't be falling down the stairs anymore, as he has taken care of the situation, leaving her quite puzzled. The next day at school, they converse outside Daeun's classroom. She insists that Ijin doesn't need to accompany her any longer since she's almost fully recovered. Once she enters the classroom, she learns that Ijin and her brother are transferring overseas. This news pleases many students. Daeun, recalling her brother's words, rushes back to the hallway to find Ijin. When she tries to call out to him, she's at a loss for words. Ijin smiles warmly at her and offers a knowing, "See you later," which moves her to tears. Later, inside a karaoke lounge, Ijin's friends speculate about her impending move abroad. Young, who shares a class with Ijin, thinks it might be true since Ijin hasn't responded to any inquiries. She fears it might be because of Ijin. Unexpectedly, Ijin enters, surprising everyone. When asked about her move, she confirms it's for 1 semester, confident her father will handle matters. She vaguely attributes it to family issues, not wanting to admit Ijin's influence. When someone inquires about Ijin, Ijin deflects, hinting at revenge on Daeun and even suggesting targeting Daeun's grandfather. Suddenly, a masked figure, unmistakably Ijin, interrupts them. Despite his disguise, he mocks that he isn't Ijin. He overheard their plotting and menacingly references a video of Daeun's assault. The girls are paralyzed with fear. With an ominous tone, Ijin chastises them for not playing music and shuts the door with clear malicious intent. At a hospital, Kim's parents discuss Ijin's whereabouts. Kim mentions she went to bid farewell to her friends. Suddenly, a news report airs, revealing the siblings' malicious actions. The footage suggests Ijin exposed them, leaving their parents horrified. Outside, the chief confronts Ijin about breaking their deal. Ijin, given their parents' political roles, had to act discreetly. He hints at a dark side to his personality. The chief doubts the congressman will let this slide. Ijin counters, having dug up dirt on the congressman's fraudulent activities, which are so damning that even his allies are calling for an investigation. Back at school, Ijin gazes out a window and receives a message from Daeun saying she'll head home alone. As he ponders his next steps, Jungchan suggests they hang out after school. Just then, Lee and Ju approach, curious about the rumors tying Ijin to the siblings' departure. They invite him to join their clique, but he declines. Lee and Ju then ominously insist all of them hang out together. The teacher introduces 2 new students, a beautiful girl named Shin Yuna and a handsome boy, Ko Sukju. Yuna is the granddaughter of the owner of the country's largest corporation, SW, and Sukju, always by her side, is trained as her secretary and bodyguard. They studied in America for 2 years and are joining the class. Lee and Ju lament the addition of such influential peers. As they take their seats, Ijin and Sukju lock eyes. Yuna inquires about Ijin, mistaking him for a celebrity. Their gazes meet, and when he turns away, she seems slightly offended. Later, Jungchan suggests visiting a PC cafe. Ijin recalls training on similar venues and is familiar with other entertainment spots like coin-operated karaoke rooms. Jungchan, noticing Ijin's contemplation, wonders if he's disinterested in his suggestions. After school, Yuna remains in class, gazing out the window. Sukju shares some details about Ijin with her, noting how he seems to have resurfaced suddenly after a long hiatus. He finds it curious that this coincided with their return and says he plans to investigate further. On his way home, Ijin checks a group chat he has with Lee and notices how Jungchan dominated the video game they played together. A flashback reveals Ijin isn't particularly good at games. In the chat, Lee and Ju ask about Jungchan's gaming rank, and he reveals he's a top-tier challenger player, leaving them in awe. While engrossed in the chat, Ijin unexpectedly runs into his sister coming out of a store. When he inquires about her purchase, she says they needed trash bags. He offers to help carry her bags, but she declines, assuring him they're light. His sister, Daeun, asks about his day. He mentions going to a PC cafe. When he asks about her school day, she says it's been good and she feels at ease. During their conversation about dinner plans, Daeun says she hasn't eaten yet since she always waits for their grandfather. Even though Ijin had already eaten with friends, he agrees to dine with her, claiming he only had a snack. At dinner, both praise Daeun's improved cooking skills. Amidst the family bonding, Ijin's mind drifts to his darker past. In his room, Ijin gets a call from his lieutenant who checks on him, inquiring if everything's okay. After a brief pause, the lieutenant jumps to the conclusion that Ijin might have killed someone. Ijin quickly reassures him, saying he had a minor issue which he resolved. The lieutenant emphasizes that Ijin should reach out if he ever faces challenges. The next day at school, Jungchan discusses with Lee and Ju about Ijin and Sukju. They speculate on who would win in a physical altercation. Lee and Ju mention hearing about Sukju's reputed ability to take down 30 people single-handedly without getting a scratch, concluding Ijin stands no chance against him. Later, Sukju confronts Ijin at school, questioning his true identity and probing about the events surrounding Kim and Heejin. Ijin maintains that while there were some disagreements, he had no role in their transfer. Sukju drops a bombshell, stating that at the previous school Ijin claimed to have attended, there's no record of a student like him ever existing. At school, Yuna and Daeun take a break, chatting in a lounge area. Their conversation turns to Ijin, and Yuna admits she didn't know Daeun had a brother. Daeun shares that they believed he died with their parents a decade ago. However, they learned he was alive 6 months back. We flash back to the emotional moment when their grandfather informed Daeun of Ijin's survival. Yuna is puzzled why Ijin didn't reach out sooner. Daeun explains that he supposedly lost his memories after the tragedy and only recently began recalling things, though she hints this might be a cover-up for his past. Yuna is clearly skeptical, though she hides it with a smile. She remarks that their grandfather must be overjoyed. Daeun shares that he even took cooking classes in anticipation of Ijin's return. Yuna's demeanor shifts, and she questions whether Ijin is genuinely Daeun's brother, going as far as to inquire about a DNA test. Daeun reassures Yuna, saying they likely conducted a DNA test prior to his return. She mentions how their grandfather commented on Ijin's striking resemblance to his younger self. Daeun, sensing Yuna's sudden keen interest in Ijin, inquires about it. Trying to deflect, Yuna asks if Ijin is seeing someone. The scene transitions back to Sukju, who suggests that Ijin's records are forged. He discloses that an old school of Ijin's claims no one resembling him ever attended there. Ijin counters, challenging Sukju to produce evidence. Sukju is taken aback, both by Ijin's boldness and his unwavering demeanor. Ijin inquires why Sukju is probing into his past, to which Sukju responds that Ijin's story raises too many red flags to ignore. A tense silence ensues, but Ijin breaks it, clarifying his main goal was to reunite with his family. However, Ijin can tell Sukju remains suspicious and will probably continue digging. Reflecting on the day, Ijin is impressed with how much they've deduced in such a short time. As classes wrap up, Lee proposes a gaming session at a PC cafe. Ijin declines, mentioning it's his grandfather's birthday. Ju suggests the trio, him, Lee, and Youngchan, head there anyway, indicating their growing friendship with Youngchan. Later, Sukju fills Yuna in on his findings, including the fact that Daeun was harassed by Heejin for the past 2 years. He believes Ijin might have been responsible for handling Kim's crew, not once but twice. Yuna jokes that Ijin's return sounds like a fairy tale, coming back to save his sister after so long. She contrasts this with her own siblings who seem eager to betray her, her smile turning melancholic as she speaks. She points out that if Ijin were really after her, he should have been more discreet, a sentiment Sukju echoes. Yuna brings up the substantial insurance payout their grandfather received after the plane crash. It grew over the years since he never spent it, but upon Ijin's return, The grandfather handed it all over to him. This leads Yuna to speculate if money was Ijin's primary motivation and expresses concern for Daeun's safety since they live under the same roof. While out shopping, Daeun cautiously inquires about Ijin's whereabouts post-crash. He hesitates, clearly troubled by the memory. Noticing his discomfort, Daeun reassures him he doesn't have to share. He brushes it off, claiming his challenges stemmed from the trauma and language barriers in an unfamiliar place. Switching to a lighter topic, Daeun mentions Yuna, who turns out to be her good friend, inquired about Ijin's relationship status, which surprises him. Later, as they celebrate their grandfather's birthday, Daeun gifts him a phone case. The grandfather, emotionally overwhelmed, mentions that Ijin's return is the greatest gift he could have asked for. Suddenly, Daeun's phone rings. It's Yuna, inviting her to a nearby convenience store for a chat. Ijin grows wary, suspecting something's amiss. Outside the store, Yuna and Daeun discuss Yuna's overseas educational experiences. Yuna inquires if Daeun ever considered studying abroad. Daeun declines, citing her reluctance to leave their grandfather alone, especially before Ijin's return. Yuna grapples internally, contemplating whether to share Sukju's revelation about Ijin's potentially fabricated background with Daeun. Daeun expresses her gratitude for the heart-to-heart, mentioning it's been a while since she had such a conversation. From a distance, Ijin spots the pair and attempts to approach discreetly. However, Sukju intercepts him, suggesting they give the two some space. But as they talk, a van unexpectedly plows into them, sending both Yuna and Daeun flying. Ijin lifts his head and realizes that Yuna and his sister have been taken. He jumps up and starts running as fast as he can, but he can't catch up, and the van vanishes into the distance. Sukju and Ijin immediately grab each other by their clothes, with Ijin demanding to know who took them. Sukju is confused, initially suspecting that Ijin might be involved. They let go of each other, and Sukju calls someone to report the kidnapping. Ijin tries to leave, but Sukju stops him, questioning if he is involved in this situation. Ijin insists he has no time to waste, declaring his determination to find his sister. Meanwhile, inside a building, the chief is interrupted from his relaxation when Ijin suddenly appears before him. In another tall building, a woman who bears a striking resemblance to Yuna receives the news of her kidnapping. She contemplates whether her grandfather should persist in challenging a particular company. If he doesn't back down and give in to their threats, Yuna's life could be in grave danger. Back with Ijin and the chief, who is revealed to be Cha Dusik, a prominent figure in the underworld. Dusik is surprised by Ijin's appearance, already having knowledge of who he is. He inquires about Ijin's intentions. Ijin gets straight to the point, stating he needs information about the kidnapping of the granddaughter of the SW Group CEO. Dusik's eyes widen in shock, and he immediately denies any involvement, stating that only a madman would dare to cross such powerful people. Ijin presses further, asking if Dusik has any idea who could be responsible. Dusik retorts, questioning why he should help Ijin after already bringing so much trouble upon him. Ijin reveals that his sister has been kidnapped as well, which prompts Dusik to relent. He shares that he's heard of foreigners inquiring about a warehouse, vehicles, and men from his crew. He turned them down, citing the job as too risky. He also mentions hearing that another group accepted the job and is based in Ijin. Dusik tosses his phone to Ijin, instructing him to save his number and promising to call if his men find the exact location. Ijin also requests to borrow Dusik's motorcycle, which is parked just outside. Sukju is baffled, questioning how Ijin can act on unverified information. Ijin responds that while Yuna is probably safe, the same cannot be assured for his sister. Sukju takes note of Ijin's quick reflexes and ability to gather information swiftly. Ijin mounts the motorcycle, revving the engine and speeding off down the road, fueled by his desperation to find Daeun unharmed. Daeun comes to and quickly realizes they've been kidnapped. Yuna apologizes for getting her mixed up in this mess. When the kidnappers approach, Yuna demands to know their intentions. One of them dismissively tells her she'll find out soon enough. Another wonders aloud what they should do with Daeun, suggesting they dispose of her since she's not part of their plan. Yuna fiercely responds, threatening to harm herself if they lay a finger on Daeun. One kidnapper, doubting her, is shocked when Yuna actually begins to hurt herself. Realizing she's serious, he comments that she's bought them a little more time. Ijin and Sukju reach the warehouse, confirming that Dusik's intel was accurate. As Ijin moves to enter, Sukju tries to hold him back, mentioning backup is on the way. Ijin, however, is impatient to rescue his sister, knowing she's in greater danger than Yuna. They quickly take down a few guards without being detected. Sukju observes Ijin's familiarity with such situations and asks who he really is. Ijin simply responds that he's just a fellow student, though his determination is evident. Meanwhile, in his office, the CEO of SW Group learns of the kidnappers' demands. They want him to cancel a recent business deal and threaten Yuna's life if he doesn't comply within the hour. He anxiously inquires about the estimated arrival time of a rescue team, learning they're about 50 minutes out. Outside the warehouse, two guards discuss the unusual number of patrols they've been assigned. Before they can continue, Ijin swiftly incapacitates both of them. He checks in with Sukju on their progress, learning Sukju took out 5 guards. Impressed, Ijin points out that he's taken down 9, surprising Sukju. Sukju admits he's unsure of the kidnappers' identities, given they have many adversaries. Ijin guesses the main culprits are with Yuna and the others are just lackeys. He then checks on Sukju's injury, a wounded arm from the earlier car crash. Ijin himself is nursing a hurt leg from the same incident. They don't have a moment to catch their breath, though, because another set of guards realizes that people are missing. One of them sees the group that's been knocked out, but by that point it's too late. Ijin has already jumped in and knocked the guy out with a knee hit. He quickly takes care of the other guy too, with just a few quick punches. Sukju calls out to Ijin, promising to apologize for suspecting him once all of this is over. Meanwhile, the leader of the kidnappers, alerted by the noise outside, sends some men to check it out. They find Ijin, and though they think they can take him down easily, he just glares at them, sizing them up. Inside, Sukju has reached Yuna. She asks him how many of their people are outside, but before he can answer, the leader and another kidnapper come up behind him. The leader comments that Sukju has been a real pain because he's always stuck close to Yuna. He tells Sukju he made a mistake coming alone, and then the other kidnapper attacks. They exchange blows, and Sukju realizes that Ijin was right. These guys are on a whole different level than the guards outside. Nevertheless, Sukju manages to land a punch to the gut and a kick, giving him the opportunity to grab the guy's arm and hit him with his knee in the back. The leader watches, impressed by Sukju's skills. This isn't a friendly fight, though. The guy Sukju is fighting pulls out a knife and slashes him 3 times. The leader tells his men to finish the job quickly, since they need to change locations before the escort team arrives. Sukju tries to keep fighting, but the cuts he's received are deep and they're affecting his ability to fight. The leader, his eyes red, throws a knife at Daeun, intending to kill her. Yuna steps in to try to protect her, but Sukju moves even faster, putting himself in the path of the knife and taking it in his lower back. The leader mocks Sukju's sacrifice, calling him stupid, and orders his man to finish off both Sukju and Daeun. Just then, a door starts to open. It's Ijin, and he's dealt with all of the guards outside. Now he's more determined than ever to end this. Back at Dusek's building, one of his men asks why he's helping Ijin, pointing out that a lot of their current problems are Ijin's fault, and that the Gosung faction, likely the kidnappers, are involved. Dusek simply responds that his sister has been kidnapped, and what else was he supposed to do? He had to help. In the warehouse, the leader wants to know who the newcomer is. He finds out it's Daeun's brother and chuckles at the idea of him trying to save his sister. Ijin checks on Daeun to see if she's injured, but she's too busy yelling at him to leave, insisting it's too dangerous. Yuna feels guilty that 2 people got involved because of her. The leader, impatient and behind on his schedule, tells his right-hand man to take out Ijin. The man lunges at Ijin, but Ijin skillfully redirects the attack back at him, pinning the knife in the man's arm. He calmly tells Daeun to close her eyes. She does, and Ijin precisely cuts the attacker's arm, leaving him writhing in pain on the floor. Sukju observes Ijin's precision, commenting on how he specifically targeted the man's muscles and tendons to incapacitate him. The leader realizes Ijin isn't just some random rescuer, noting his expertise and demeanor. Drawing a larger knife, the leader attacks Ijin, but Ijin is quick to dodge and counter. Their clash intensifies until Ijin stops the leader's assault with a powerful palm strike, forcing the leader to momentarily retreat. The fight picks up again, with Ijin deftly slicing the leader's arm, causing him to wonder if Ijin might be the better knife fighter. Ijin lands another cut and delivers a kick to the leader's face, knocking off his mask. Enraged and feeling cornered, the leader draws a gun, ready to shoot Ijin. But before he can act, Ijin hurls his knife, embedding it into the leader's torso, and quickly moves in to disable him with another forceful palm strike. Both Yuna and Sukju watch in stunned silence, almost afraid of Ijin. Ijin tells Daeun it's safe to look now, smiling softly at her, reassuring her he's there to save her. Touched, Daeun gently touches Ijin's face, checking if he's all right. Caught off guard by her gesture, Ijin insists he's fine. Overwhelmed, Daeun starts crying, which deeply concerns Ijin. Meanwhile, in the background, Yuna gazes at Ijin with a longing expression. Inside a hospital owned by SW, Ijin is sitting near a door, seemingly waiting for Daeun. His phone buzzes with a message from the group chat he has with his high school buddies. Their chat brings a smile to his face. He leans back in his chair, glancing around the room to take in his surroundings, the psychiatric ward. The scene transitions to the aftermath of that fateful night when the kidnappers were captured. Daeun is getting a medical examination, and Yuna sneaks up behind Ijin, suggesting she should be checked out at the hospital too, not just for any unseen physical injuries, but for her mental well-being, especially given her past troubles with those bully siblings. Yuna suggests therapy might be beneficial for her. After her checkup, Daeun assures them that she's all right and only needs to come back weekly. She inquires about Ijin's health. He downplays his injuries, mentioning a few minor cuts and bruises. She breathes a sigh of relief, while Ijin reflects on the recent events and worries about how they may have impacted Daeun. She starts to pose a question but hesitates, wondering how Ijin learned to fight so proficiently before he moved to Korea. They catch up with Yuna, who's curious about their medical consultations and therapy sessions. She's also quick to apologize, to which Daeun reminds her that she's already said sorry the day before. Ijin's gaze meets that of Yuna's bodyguard, who observes him intently. Daeun suggests they pay a visit to Sukju. In Sukju's hospital room, Daeun expresses her gratitude with a respectful nod. He's taken aback and tells her it's unnecessary. She's also curious about his recovery, and he assures her he's much better. From the doorway, Yuna and her bodyguard observe Ijin. They exchange brief goodbyes before exiting. Outside, Yuna and her bodyguard delve into a discussion about Ijin. The bodyguard expresses his disbelief that someone as young as Ijin could overpower so many adversaries. Yuna isn't so sure, but the bodyguard elaborates. It wasn't just a brawl. Ijin discreetly incapacitated over 10 men outside, and he didn't fatally wound any of them. The wounds inflicted on the two guys in the warehouse indicate a high level of expertise with a knife, not just in training, but in actual combat situations. Moreover, the two kidnappers inside the warehouse and 4 of the men outside were elite operatives from overseas. Pairing this with Sukju's account, they conclude Ijin must have had professional combat training and extensive field experience. As they walk home, Daeun expresses her gratitude to Ijin, mentioning how he's always there to help. Ijin flips the sentiment, saying he should be the one thanking her. He recalls the moment when Daeun showed genuine concern for him, making him realize what it feels like to have family. Inside a high-rise, a woman with ties to Yuna speaks highly of Sukju for his swift rescue efforts. She wishes she had someone like Sukju on her side instead of Yuna's. One of her associates brings up a peculiar rumor. While Sukju played a significant role, the bulk of the action was carried out by a student from his class. The CEO perks up with interest. She's taken aback to hear her grandfather might be involved and wonders if there's truth to the rumor. Alone in his room, Ijin reflects on how he appeared in front of Daeun, pushing himself even harder in his training. Daeun calls him into the dining area, offering him some fruit. While there, he checks in on her well-being, and she chuckles, reminding him he already asked earlier. She reassures him with a smile, sensing that Ijin might be concerned about how he presented himself in front of her. He might assume she's awestruck and curious about his combat skills, but she won't probe. He risked everything to save her, after all. She also understands the difficulty of discussing the past, revealing that she couldn't even confide in her grandpa about the bullying she endured. Some topics are simply too painful to address. Suddenly, Daeun's phone buzzes, startling her. It's Yuna, asking Ijin to meet at the nearby convenience store. When he gets there, he notices the heightened security around Yuna due to recent events. She invites him to sit, extending her apologies for dragging Daeun into the mess, yet expressing gratitude for his bravery. Ijin clarifies he acted primarily for Daeun's sake. Acknowledging this, Yuna still wants to express her thanks. She also assures him she won't dig into his background any further. His gaze turns icy as he meets her eyes. Yuna explains her earlier suspicion towards him, especially given the series of unfortunate events surrounding her. It seems Ijin had a close call with a kidnapping in the States too. As he stands to leave, Yuna interjects, explaining that her grandfather wants to personally thank him. Ijin declines, pointing out he wasn't trying to save her in the first place. Heading back home, he notices one of Dusek's guys emerging from an alley, beaten and bloody. The guy blames Ijin, explaining that the Gosong gang discovered he'd assisted Ijin, leading them to attack Dusek's hideout. Inside, a gang and their boss confront Dusek. The boss challenges Dusek, who mockingly observes that even knowing Dusek's crew was out of town, the boss still didn't come alone. One gang member reminds Dusek that he's crossed a congressman and the Gosong crew recently. Dusek retorts that he just needed to teach them a lesson, infuriating the boss, who orders his crew to attack. Dusek holds his own impressively until he's blindsided with a wooden plank. Although he takes down that assailant, he's hurt. Dusek realizes the odds against him, contemplating if this is his end and wondering if Ijin managed to protect his sister. Outside, Ijin arrives on Dusek's motorcycle. One gang member tries to confront him, but is quickly silenced by a swift kick from Ijin. It's clear he's there to save Dusek. Dispatching the guards outside and emitting an intense, almost palpable energy, Ijin storms the building. Inside, a group tries to stop him, but he effortlessly takes most of them down, chasing down the last man with a powerful flying kick. As Dusek continues his own fight, the boss reflects on Dusek's combat skills, thinking they wouldn't have stood a chance if Dusek had backup. Despite his bravery, Dusek is outnumbered, and they wear him down. One suggests Dusek surrender for better treatment, but Dusek, with a defiant grin, urges them to fight to the end. His unnerving confidence makes the gang uneasy. Disturbed by the ruckus Ijin is causing outside, they try to figure out what's happening. Ijin makes his entrance, coming straight from the hallway into the room, leaving one of the gang members wondering who this kid is. Dusek, surprised, asks Ijin what he's doing there, and Ijin responds that he just needed to return the motorcycle. One of the leaders, unimpressed, tells his guys to rough Ijin up as well. Dusek quickly interjects, telling them to let Ijin go. The leader dismisses the idea, stating they can't just let Ijin leave. However, Ijin has other plans, as he swiftly takes down the thugs attacking him, causing the leaders to panic. Dusek takes the opportunity to fill them in, admitting that even he can't take Ijin down. As more thugs attempt to attack, they quickly realize they're no match for Ijin. With all the attention on Ijin, Dusek seizes the moment and takes out the leaders. After the brawl, an exhausted Dusek collapses, while Ijin, standing over him with bloodied knuckles, declares that they're even now. Dusek realizes Ijin must be talking about the information he provided earlier. He asks Ijin about his sister, and Ijin assures him that she was saved in time, thanks to Dusek's help. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Dusek's underling wakes up, screaming out for his boss, only to find Dusek right there beside him, equally worn out. The underling, confused, asks how they got there, and Dusek explains he was hurt and they took a cab to the hospital. The underling, concerned, asks about the gangs that attacked them, the Gosong and Sungsu clans. Dusek reassures him that they've been dealt with. The underling then shares his encounter with Ijin, explaining he was so furious about the attack that he went looking for Ijin, but was quickly knocked out and sent to the hospital. Dusek tells him how he thought he was a goner when more gang members kept showing up, but then Ijin appeared, wiped out everyone, and left saying his debt was paid. The underling, impressed, can't help but wonder what kind of powerhouse Ijin really is. Dusek, lightening the mood, jokes that Ijin is just a regular high school kid. Later, during a game of football, Ijin instinctively catches the ball, leaving his friends in awe. When the game ends, they invite him to join them at the PC cafe. Ijin tells them he'll catch up later as he has to take his sister home today, and they assure him they'll save a spot for him. While packing up after school, Daeun ponders over which soup she should prepare for dinner. Her thoughts are interrupted when she overhears some classmates mentioning Ijin's name. A few girls, looking out the window and admiring Ijin, approach Daeun to ask if he's seeing anyone. Impatiently waiting for an answer, they rush off in a fluster when Daeun says he isn't. Leaving school, Daeun notices Ijin's popularity, even recalling how often Yuna inquires about him. She wonders why he's still single. Maybe he hasn't found the right person yet? She then sees Ijin chatting with his buddy, Lee, by the school entrance. As she approaches, a flustered Lee greets her. They plan to move ahead without Ijin, expecting him to catch up later. Daeun wonders if Ijin had other plans, but he assures her he'll stop by their house first. Sensing it's out of concern for her, Daeun tells him she's fine and even turned down a bodyguard offer from Yuna, wanting to maintain a normal life. Ijin agrees but admits he enjoys walking with her, not out of worry, but because he values her company. Just then, Ijin spots a familiar face from Yuna's circle waiting nearby. The two wonder about her identity. She introduces herself as Yuna's cousin and expresses her wish to take them out as a token of gratitude. Ijin declines, mentioning he's already been thanked. Undeterred, she tries to press him further with questions, but he brushes past her, visibly irritated. She's taken aback by his frankness, and her bodyguard checks if he should intervene. She decides against it, reflecting on Ijin's evident annoyance. At the gaming cafe, Youngshan heads to the restroom but accidentally collides with a stranger, who angrily chides him for his carelessness. Just as the stranger is about to slap Youngshan, Lee steps in, clearly intimidating the would-be bully. With a stern look from Lee, the guy retreats. Lee then advises Youngshan they should get back to their computers, noting that Ju might be upset if they're late. Upon their return, Ju questions their delay, so Lee explains their run-in with a bully from Gasup Technical High School. Ju checks on Youngshan, asking if he's okay. Youngshan confirms he's fine thanks to Lee's intervention, but it appears the bully they confronted earlier has returned with backup to the entrance of the gaming cafe. The group is too engrossed in their game to notice them right away. When Ju finally spots them, the bully gestures for them to step outside. Youngshan feels responsible, believing the situation escalated because of him. The bully jeers, suggesting they wouldn't have been so brave if they didn't have numbers on their side. Lee retorts, joking about the bully's newfound bravado now that he's got friends. Annoyed, the bully takes a swing at Lee, but misses. Lee dodges and lands a solid slap on the bully's face. Concerned, Youngshan feels if he had been more vigilant, this might not have happened. Lee comforts him, explaining it's not on him, but rather the bullies causing the ruckus. Ju points out that Lee borrowed that line from Ijin, which makes Lee slightly embarrassed. Growing tired of the banter, the bullies charge at them. Lee and Ju fend off their attackers quite effectively, telling Youngshan to stay clear. Youngshan feels guilty, thinking this entire skirmish occurred because of him. Amid the fight, one of the bullies catches Lee off guard, leaving him vulnerable. However, Youngshan steps in, mustering his strength to tackle the bully, allowing Lee to finish the job with a kick. With the bullies down, Lee checks on Youngshan. Youngshan, still feeling responsible, apologizes once more. Lee reassures him that he wasn't to blame. Soon after, they get a text from Ijin asking about their whereabouts. They respond, mentioning he missed an epic 6 vs 3 brawl. Re-entering the cafe, they're taken aback by the number of guys Ijin has taken down. Ijin explains they went after him because of his school uniform, earning looks of admiration from the group. Curious about what comes next? Click on this video to continue. And don't forget to like and subscribe.